First impressions aren't the most important thing. They're the only thing. At Ernie's Print Shop, we'll produce what you need to represent your company professionally. Right now, you can get 1,000 full-color business cards, 1,000 4x6 postcards, or a 3x5 banner for just $60. You choose. Check us out at Ernie'sPrintShop.com. Ernie's Print Shop. Over 50 years, one source, one solution. Ernie'sPrintShop.com. 502-969-8585.
Being a victim of crime is no joke, but you do have options that can help you avoid becoming a victim. I'm Ed Springston of the My View Matters radio show, and on behalf of myself and co-host Ed Martin, I urge each of you to help us fight against crime. You can do your part by calling Crime Stoppers at 582-CLUE. Since 1982, Crime Stoppers has helped get over 23,000 criminals off the street with your help. Working together, we can make a difference to take our streets back. Please call Crime Stoppers at 582-CLUE, or you can visit them online at www.582clue.com. Remember, Crime Stoppers always offers up to a $1,000 reward. Get involved and help make a positive change in your neighborhood. Thanks.
Advertisers, here's a great way to reach a quality audience. Get heard on My View Matters and make some noise in the marketplace.
Email myviewmatters@aol.com for advertising opportunities. Make a sound investment.
So, I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!"
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to the Ed Springston Show, brought to you by the MVM Radio Network, home of LouisvillePolitics.com, where you catch replays of this show and just about anything else you want to find out. You can also go to EdSpringston.com and check out whatever's going on there, too. I tell you, as always, we have a great show for you. For you new guys to the show, call-in numbers are 858-683-1326 or 502-805-0334. For you guys that are in the listening queue, as always, we appreciate it. Just click that little number 1 on your dial pad, and we know you want to get heard on air. And for the rest of you folks, come join the live chat. Sign in on Facebook and anything else. You can get to the live chat doing it that way as well. In the meantime, it is Wednesday, and every Wednesday, of course, who do we have? Yes, you guessed it, Dale the Truth. How are you, sir?
I am doing great, my friend. How are you?
I don't know. We'll find out one day. I've been under the weather again the last.
I'm not in the West End. In the middle of the Black Riot, so we're not supposed to talk about that.
Oh, we've been talking about it. We're actually going to talk about it tonight, too.
I've been waiting for this. I'm in rare form tonight.
Oh, my goodness. Well, you're going to get a chance to get to that in a minute. I tell you, that's the biggest story really going on. And it's kind of crazy what the hell we've gotten into here. But I tell you, before we get there, though, I do want to touch on one story. WFPL is reporting today, Louisville Councilman David James has been under the gun by Michael Connell, the county attorney, and Jim King, his good friend Jim King, are working together on this. And they tried to get Attorney General Jack Conway to tell David James he had to quit his job at U of L or quit being on the Metro Council because of conflicting oaths. Well, Tom Wine, Commonwealth Attorney Tom Wine, was sent this by Attorney General Jack Conway and said it was his to rule on. And Tom Wine sent it right back. He sent it right back to, yep, you guessed it, Jack Conway, and said, guess what? It's not ours to deal with. According to a March 21st letter, Tom Wine told Conway that he does not have the jurisdiction to rule on David James because this is a civil matter. And he went on to say that he believes there are several grounds, both legal and ethical, that prohibit his office from pursuing this action. what makes this story so interesting is Tom Wine actually went on in his letter to basically say that he agrees with Mike O'Connell and Jack Conway that David James is basically a usurper in a state office. But since O'Connell and Conway haven't made that argument clear, it's not his responsibility to make it for them. Doesn't this sound more like more of the cover-up? That this was just a way for Jack Conway and Mike O'Connell to act like they did something to take it out of their hands?
Well, the question is, did Jack Conway talk to his wife and pray and talk to God about it? That's what I want to know. Because that's what he did on the gay marriage thing. I mean, to me, I haven't got to hear the last 2 nights, so again, I don't know if I'm talking about stuff that you and Mr. Martin talked about. But to me, I don't like the fact that David James is double dipping and holding 2 government jobs. I think that there are probably a lot more people like him out there, and they're singling out one. It's just like in Washington. If they single out one politician, there's a lot more. They got their fingers pointing at one, all the other fingers pointing back at themselves. So there's a lot of hypocrites in local and state government. I don't like what David James is doing, and I doubt that he's the only one doing it.
Well, I totally disagree with you. I don't think David James is doing anything wrong. I mean, the University of Louisville is not a city job. The University of Louisville.
It's a city university. It's not a private university.
No, it's not. It's a state university, but it's not a city university. It has absolutely nothing to do with it.
I'm saying it's a government university is what I mean. I don't like seeing government officials. I agree that he's not doing 2 jobs under the same oath. I get that. I'm just saying I get sick of seeing government officials double, triple dipping. We see it happen in Metro Council. They'll leave that seat, and then they'll go run for another seat. But at least they're running for one at a time. He's holding 2 government jobs at once.
Well, no, I mean, that is the same thing to me. I mean, using that argument is the same thing to me as these double dippers that are going out there retiring and then coming back in the same job 30 days later at a higher pay rate than they had when they retired.
Yeah, if it's government, I disagree with them doing that because that's our tax dollars.
Well, essentially, that's the way I look at this. But in this particular case, though, I mean, the whole argument by Mike O'Connell was that David James has taken 2 different oaths that conflict with each other because he's carrying 2 different jobs. My problem is, there's not a lawyer out there. There's 3 lawyers on the Metro Council who take the same oath to uphold the state laws of Kentucky as David James did to be a cop at U of L. So the conflict, you still got the same conflict there, don't you? You're taking a state oath and a city oath. You got a state.
He's probably pissed somebody off, so they're going after him because there's so many of them doing it. Again, if someone does it in the private sector, it's none of my business. But you and I and Mr. Martin and Mr. Moe and everybody else in this network, we pay our own city taxes, we pay state taxes, and we pay federal taxes. So I think at that point, it's in our interest, and I don't like any of them doing it. But they probably went after him because he pissed somebody off. He didn't grease the right hands or kiss the right asses, I guess.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, though. But if you're going to sit here and say you have a conflicting oath because one is for a state job and one is for a city job, then Mike O'Connell can't keep his job. Jack Conway can't keep his job. Steve Beshear can't keep his job. I mean, they're all attorneys. And every one of those they take an oath of office to uphold the state constitution of Kentucky, just as David James has done, taking an oath to uphold the state daggone laws and everything else as a U of L police officer. So to me, it's the same. It's apples and apples. So if this isn't good for David James, then it certainly can't be good for any other elected official who happens to be an attorney or a doctor or anything else. If you
I agree. I think the less attorneys on the council, the better. Did I hear you say there's only 3? There's only 3 attorneys on the Metro Council. Are you sure?
Believe it or not, yep. You've got David Tandy.
As corrupt as they are, that's very hard to believe. I believe you. I know. That's wild.
Well, you've got David Tandy, David Yates, and Brent Ackerson. Those are the 3 attorneys.
Wow.
So
that's
I don't know.
Too many, but that's hard to believe that as corrupt as they are, I guess the corruption's gotten out of just the elites that are the law industry.
Oh, it's crazy, isn't it? But it's fascinating to me that they're making this argument. So I'm really curious to see how Conway handles it now. And I wonder if this was in some way for Tom Wine to save face and force Jack Conway to make a decision so Jack can claim, some kind of thing that, well, I tried, but I don't know.
Jack wants to run for higher office. Jack has delusions of grandeur that he can be governor, and we know that O'Connell's up for re-election, and I'm guessing is the other judge you mentioned, is he also, or the other Democrat bureaucrat, is he also up for election, Tom Wise? Tom Wine?
No, Tom Wine just got elected. No.
Okay.
Tom Wine got elected to replace Dave
he's
Singleton.
got the least to worry about. I mean, we know Conway wants to seek higher office, and we know O'Connell's got a primary for his office, so they've got to do all the right politically correct things.
Right. Well, we'll see what happens with all of that for sure. I tell you, and so that is one of the biggest things. But let's get into what you want to talk about, man. Because I tell you that's where we were headed next anyway. Is we've got more information on the black riots on Saturday night. They're now saying,
I just want to call them what they are. I mean, they keep wanting to tell us how they're youth riots, and like I said, I totally plead ignorance to hearing anything that you and Mr. Martin talked about the last 2 nights. I've been working overtime and not getting to listen to the shows yet. But all I know is you had that idiot mayor standing up there, and he surrounded himself with all these black government employees, and then they sit there and told us that a group of 200 teens who are all black, I've looked over the pictures, I haven't seen one little white spot in there yet. So we have a dumb mayor surrounded by black government officials telling us that when you see 200 black teens riot, 100% of them black, and their victims are 80% white, oh, there's nothing racial here. Are you kidding me?
Well, that's exactly it. Today they announced, Chief Conrad and them announced, it was actually yesterday, I just didn't get the exact numbers in time, but they announced yesterday that there were 7 white men, 1 white woman, 1 black man, and 1 black teenage girl. So, that there were victims of these attacks. There was at least 17 different incidences, at least 10 assaults. 1 man was put in the hospital with a concussion, broken ribs, and everything else. This is the kind of stuff that always goes on down at Waterfront Park.
Yep.
You get down in that area, and this is the stuff that is not reported by mainstream. This one they had no choice to report. There were too many incidents.
And they're trying to cover it up, and that's why I said I knew on this network that we would tell the truth about it. But when they stand there and tell us, because one little black girl was involved, therefore it's not racial, you tell me, right, Mr. Springston, what would you think if it was reversed? We know it's a hypothetical that's never going to happen, but again, this is why we are the truth here, and we tell the truth. You tell me, Mr. Springston, what would have happened if instead of being downtown, what if this was in J-Town, or what if this was in Anchorage, or what if this was on Shelbyville Road, and you had 200 white teens, and their victims were 80% black? How would it be reported?
Oh, exactly. It would exactly. Unruly white mobs.
They'd be looking for their haircuts, and they'd say, look, he's got a shaved head, so he's a neo-Nazi, and they'd be calling them the Third Reich. They'd be saying they're Hitler Youth if they were all white, but it's okay if they're all black. Nothing to see here.
Oh, that's exactly it. And we've got Steve Conrad going on there saying that this isn't something that normally happens. That's a lie. Last night we pointed out a story from 2011.
That's what I don't get. Are his handlers just telling him to say that? I mean, we like Conrad. You and I both like Conrad. Is he turning against the common people, or is this just his PR machine telling him to say this, Ed?
Well, I guarantee you he's got to play politics. There's no choice in that for his job. But it's interesting because we spend time, as I pointed out last night, we have our officers spend all their time putting people in jail for no reason, like they did with me. Ended up losing that case. They ended up having to pay that. I can't tell you how much money they pay in damages because of crap like that. And we've got this kind of situation going on. Instead of putting these officers where they should be, we knew this event was going on. This event was posted everywhere. The LMPD knew that there were going to be 200 teenagers at the bridge, that they were supposedly there to honor someone who had gotten stabbed, a girl who had gotten stabbed there. So, this was the way it was supposed to be, and then they decided to go out and start doing these random violence. Now, it wasn't the whole 200, folks. I mean, don't get me wrong. It was a group of 10 to 15 people out of that whole group that splintered off and went on this mob-like mentality. They're nothing but a bunch of punk thugs. But this is what concerns me, because this has been going on for years. Our good friend Tom McAdams pointed this out over at theexaminer.com in 2011. We had a very similar situation. 200 black teens got together at an event at Waterfront Park, and then they went on this rampage. And everything that's happened between then and now, this isn't the first time this has happened since then. It happens all the time. But
did you see the civil rights activists out, Ed? Did you see?
Oh,
I don't even have names. I don't know which ones were quote-unquote community leaders and which ones were quote-unquote reverends and which ones were quote-unquote government officials. Did you see the folks out there who happen to be minorities sitting there saying, oh, well, we can't say this is racial. Oh, we can't be, what is the word I'm looking for? We can't be, not stereotyping. What's the word I'm looking for, Ed?
Oh, these were uncontrolled youth. This has nothing to do with race. I don't know which word you're looking for, but that's what they're out there saying.
They're talking about you can't use them as an example. Right. My brain isn't working tonight, but they said we can't stereotype and we can't use the demographics to say that it's something to do with black youth. But show me a white youth in the crowd. This is what they're saying. That we can't paint this with a broad stroke and say it has anything to do with race. And that's all they were minorities. There was no whites in the crowd. And I don't know how many local media units are picking up on this, but why isn't it the top story on every newscast?
Oh, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. You had Sadiqa Reynolds out there, of course, trying to say this wasn't race-related. This was just, poor, underprivileged youth or whatever. So we've got all these different things going on out here. But we know this crap has been going on since at least 2011, and nothing ever gets reported on it. This is not a random act of violence, folks. If you go downtown after dark, anywhere around the Waterfront Park, the skate park, the bridge, anything close to 4th Street Live, not on 4th Street Live now. You got cops there that'll beat you up and keep you out. But anything closer in the surrounding area, hey, you're taking a risk. You're taking a risk with your life. That's how dangerous it is here. But it never gets reported or anything else. And it's really fascinating, the Reverend Kevin Cosby. What an idiot. This guy is so screwed up, it's unbelievable. But Kevin Cosby goes out yesterday because Chief Conrad had said that they were going to increase the amount of police and stuff that they have. They're going to start increasing the police in these target areas and things like that. And Kevin Cosby went on record to say that an increased police presence isn't what's going to do any good down there. Investment in the West End is. Well, this is the same damn thing I focused and built my mayorship on in 2006 when I ran for mayor here. We needed to invest in the West End and bring jobs and bring this community to be inclusive in the rest of Louisville. This isn't a new concept. This is something I've been stating for years. Kevin Cosby just had the opportunity with the Workforce Training Development Education Facility that we talked about a month ago to bring it into 8th and Kentucky and to give the West End new job training, new revitalization, all these different things. And he sold out for a $300,000 annual federal grant and accreditation for Simmons College. Now he's got a $300,000 expense account. He benefited, but the people in the West End that could have relied on those jobs and the workforce training lost out. So these false prophets, these false preachers like Kevin Cosby sit out there and try to act like they care about the West End community, and I want the people in the West End community, the African-American predominantly community, to really think about this. You look at Kevin Cosby, look at everything he has gained since he has been in power at St. Stephen's Church and everything else, and since he's been kissing the rich white guy Democrat ass that gets elected to office, and you look at Kevin Cosby and see how he has grown, but look at your community and see how you have, and you're going to find a stark difference, are they not?
Well, you can't resolve the problem if you're unable to even speak of it. And the word I was looking for earlier is profiling, because they said, we can't profile young African-American men. Well, the hell you can't. They were the only ones out there. Like I said, if this was a story, and I know people laugh because even the suggestion of having it reversed, it wouldn't be like that. But if you had 200 white male teenagers, I don't know if they were all male. Let's just say 200 white teenagers, and let's say they were out at the summit, and they found a few blacks and started beating the hell out of them. You know how it would be reported. It would be on the national news all night long.
Oh, exactly. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt at all. And that's
what about the story?
About
here's another one for you, Ed. Another side of, we know how hypocritical the media is and how they don't want to talk about race. What about the story where we heard those kids were all supposedly down there in memoriam of their friend, the 14-year-old who got stabbed on the bus? Then today the story comes out that the two teenagers were provoking the black man who stabbed them. So again, I have to ask, if they had been provoking a white man and a white man had killed them, boy, isn't that called George Zimmerman? Wouldn't we be hearing how horrible it would be if a white man had killed the two black teenagers? So my question is, where are the marches, where are the protests and the sign waivers going to be at when this guy had to defend himself and kill this kid?
Well, let's be fair about this. The people that were down there at the bridge weren't black and they weren't African American. They were white. They were white African Americans. Okay, because if we can come up with the Hispanic white guy for George Zimmerman, then we have to come up with a new term for those people involved as well. But no, you're right. They were down there for stabbing victim McQuail Offit, 14-year-old who was killed on a TARC bus. And, down there to memorialize her, and ended up going this road. And what's really fascinating is the responses we're getting. It's like this. Greg Fisher went on record and said, what we're interested in is people that are ready to be a part of the solution. It's easy to be a critic from the couch, and if you're one of those, we expect you to get off the couch and help. And you got these dumb, idiot liberals out there who are sitting here thinking that was a great thing to say without realizing that Greg Fisher, the Democratic mafia that includes everything all the way up to Governor Steve Beshear, Lieutenant Governor Jerry Abramson, are the ones who are sitting on the couch watching the West End explode, because they have had the power for the last 50 years. They have had the power to bring the West End of Louisville into mainstream Louisville and make them a part of this community instead of, if you will, blackballing them and keeping them off to the side. They are the reason the West End suffers. Greg Fisher is the reason the West End suffers, along with his Democratic mafia ilk who have had all the power and control. So
what is news
I find that insulting.
No, I agree. And what is news doesn't make the news. How many in our audience? Our audience is pretty informed. We have a borderline Mensa audience as far as people who are informed of what's going on. But how many people in our audience heard about in the last few months about the hundreds of young blacks at the Florida State Fair last month? How many in our audience heard about the several hundred black youths who rioted at the Highland Mall in Austin, Texas 2 months ago? How many of them heard about the 600 young blacks who rioted at the Hollywood River City movie theater in Jacksonville, Florida in December? And how many of them heard about the 400 young blacks who rioted and looted at the King Plaza Shopping Center in Brooklyn 2 months ago?
Well, we've got a couple in the chat room right now that every time you bring up an incident, they say me. How many know me?
Good, how many people outside of our audience know about it? That's the problem.
Well, I agree with you. And that is the big problem, because mainstream media refuses to do their job, especially on a local level. We don't have a media here. What we have is a communistic, state-controlled media right here in Louisville. They report exactly what they're allowed
to do every night. I mean, my gosh, they don't want to pay for programming. They know people aren't watching television as much, so they think they're saving money by putting out all these little roving news babes to run around, and they got like 2.5 hours of news on 3 or 4 local channels, and they don't cover news.
I agree. And if you look at each half-hour programming, it's all the same damn program. They're just recycling the same stories over and over and over. And it's interesting, too, because we continue looking at this Metro Council, for example. Metro Council President Jim King, for example, said that him and the other council members are very concerned, and they're going to make this issue their top priority. Are you kidding me? This issue will become a top priority for Jim King as soon as he can find out a way for King Southern Bank to make money at it. He has scheduled a special meeting of the Council's Public Safety Committee for 3:30 today. I haven't got anything on that, and plan to hold people, including Chief Conrad, accountable. And King goes on to say he's heard, and check this out, this is the beauty of it, because this is where you know King's at. King said he has heard from concerned businessmen and community leaders who expressed to him how important it was we solve this problem. They're appalled, and I'm appalled, thinking about what those victims went through. It's beyond unacceptable. Give me a break. The businessmen are complaining. The businessmen have been complaining. But those are the only people Jim King cares about. The community leaders, are you kidding me? Name one community leader in the West End.
No, I agree. There's no community leaders down there. Maybe the ones who are out on parole or work release. But did you see the King clan, the Jim King group, who they were in the St. Patrick's Day parade in the Highlands? Did you see that this year?
No, I didn't watch it.
I was down there, and I started booing, and everybody's looking at me. So I thought, okay, I'm liable to get lynched myself. So I didn't boo very long. But I kid you not, they had a float or a little trolley or whatever you call it, and there was all the King family, and they had on the front, it said the King clan, and they had a little crown and like a little tiara on it.
Oh, big surprise there.
So there you go. Big surprise
there. Yeah. And King, of course, goes on to say that he's already told Fisher that whatever the city needs as far as money for police overtime or any surveillance cameras, that the council will find the money to fund it. This is a joke, and here's something else too, because and I like this. I like this particular story too. It actually got this from the Courier Journal, folks. I'll give him credit on this one. But Dr. Alan Josephson is a psychiatrist who runs the University of Louisville Physicians Clinic, the Bingham Clinic, and he starts trying to describe what angry mobs are. What he goes on to say is that people do things in groups with the anonymity or protection of a group that they might not do alone. Children without strong family structures and ingrained moral compasses are particularly susceptible. What does that mean in plain English? Kids whose parents don't give a shit are the ones who are causing the problems because they don't have people at home that hold them accountable. That's why they're in trouble at school. They don't have anybody at school that can hold them accountable. So there you go. With no accountability, we're going to get what we deserve, and this is exactly why.
Well, Louisville spent these millions of dollars for this, allegedly beautiful waterfront, and to draw people into a struggling downtown area that people don't really want to be in. I mean, we'll see in a couple of weeks when you'll have hundreds of thousands of sheep will go down over thunder over Louisville, where I wouldn't be caught dead at. And you have these hoodlums running around like animals destroying everything. Then I see another story, again, all these local news stories run together. They've already graffitied all over the new bridge area.
Oh, I agree. And ironically,
there's already graffiti all over there. And again, you'd think if they spent those millions of dollars there, I get that they want to hide the cops on the expressway. They want to hide them over there by the corner of Lynn Station and Hurstbourne. They want to hide them over there by Taylorsville Road. And I'm sure they're out there on Dixie Highway like that too. I get they want to hide them out there for revenue enhancement, but this is the millions of dollars that they used to create the waterfront, so they think maybe they want to have them out there defending that. But like you said, Ed, when they wanted to rough you up because they knew you were an easy victim. They knew you weren't going to shoot them or stab them. They're afraid to be in these areas with all these hoodlums.
Yeah, they didn't mind paying me. They didn't mind paying me when they lost in court, though, right? I mean, that's the problem there. And when you look at this, and they really don't. I mean, if you look at the cops out here in PRP, you'll find them hiding behind buildings, not with a radar gun on, because they can't get anybody where they're hiding at. You'll see them pulled up next to each other, driver's door to driver's door, just sitting there for hours laughing and joking and talking instead of out patrolling the streets to take care of business. You have cops that are with LMPD that will flat out tell you there's parts of the West End that they won't go into, that they're scared to go into, so they avoid it. They're not allowed to go in there because it's so bad.
Yeah, they've already thrown in the white flag when it comes to these neighborhoods. They don't want to be there. We know the police officers that get that beat are the ones that just came out of the academy, and they had no say in the matter because I know they're all unionized, so they're the lowest guy on seniority. So the only ones that go down there are the ones who are told by their superiors that they have to go down there.
That's exactly it. And, and then, of course, we find out again on Saturday night that Chief Conrad finally acknowledged that there had actually been 2 assaults already reported 20 minutes before the 13-year-old girl, because remember, we were told that this all started with this assault on this 13-year-old girl. No, the assault started a full 20 minutes earlier than that. There were 2 assaults that had already been reported before they ever attacked the 13-year-old girl. And Jean Henry, she's the wife of the 61-year-old man that was beat up. She was there, and she said the 10 boys walked up to them and didn't say nothing, just started attacking him. And her 2 young grandkids were there watching as they did it. And he had a whole crowd of people gather around and just watch and didn't do nothing about it.
And they show that poor store owner. I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming. I guess it'll be racist if I say this. I'm assuming he's not originally from here, as they say, because he's of a different ethnicity. And so they show this poor store owner who has built up his own store and chose to, build a local little quick store, short stop kind of store down that area of town. And they show this video where he and maybe 1 or 2 other guys are trying to keep a mob of, God knows, it looks like 40 or 50 from busting in the store. And he says this happens every night. Then you have people like Conrad and his PR people and his spokespeople saying, oh, there's nothing to see here, that the downtown area is great. Who are you going to believe? The police officers who Ed and I just told you don't want to go down there, or the store owner who makes his livelihood down there and says it happens every night?
Well, that's exactly it. But what they do is when they report this crime at this particular location, they actually, when they put it on paper, they put it at a different location out of that area so that it doesn't look like it happened in that area. I mean, they're misreporting stats on purpose. 2 officers arrived. 2 officers arrived when Miss Henry's husband was attacked. She drove her husband to the hospital and filed a report Sunday morning. Why did she file a report Sunday morning? Because the 2 officers that arrived did not take a report. Conrad actually had to address that today and said, yes, it is department policy to take reports on all assaults, even if the suspect is unknown. So these officers who didn't take the report, this is nothing new. This is nothing new. These cops do this crazy stuff all the time because they don't have any accountability. The two cops that arrested me for no reason and ended up having to pay the price it cost the city money, it wasn't much because I settled. I didn't feel like going through no more garbage. But they did cost me a year and a half of my life because they put it on my background check, and I had an open case that could have got me 12 months in jail. It made me unhireable. I couldn't get hired for a job.
I know. Rhetorically again, why is it okay for them to make you quote unquote unhireable? But if you try to just stamp out and eradicate some of the crime in the West End, they'll say, "Oh, this isn't the answer. You need to throw money at the problem, and you need to get these kids involved." And I mean, aren't these kids supposed to be in that youth brigade, that Black Power turned militia youth brigade of Obama? Aren't they all supposed to be in D.C. serving under his control right now anyway?
Well, I mean, I guess so. But in one defense, though, I do have to say this. We always talk about throwing money at the problem, and we always say that that's bad. In this particular case, not throwing money at the problem has created this problem. What I mean by that is I don't mean just give people money to do whatever they want. I mean by investing money in infrastructure and jobs and bringing jobs to the neighborhood, investing in overtime, hiring police officers to get rid of the crime and everything else so that people feel comfortable shopping and going into the West End. The West End used to be the economic hub of Louisville with Fountain Ferry and everything else. Until what? Oh, that's right. They had racial violence, shut down Fountain Ferry, and the white government moved slightly east to where they're at right now and left the West End alone and has never went back. That's the problem with the West End. So it does take money, but it takes money invested into the infrastructure and job creation. It doesn't take money throwing it at these so-called, community leaders so they can tell kids, hey, don't go out and fight, it's bad. That's idiotic. It's nuts.
That's what Greg Fisher stood there and said. I watched his quote, and I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He looked out at the camera and said, "You kids out there, that's not how we roll in Louisville." He said that. Those are his words.
Oh, yeah, I know.
That's not how we roll in Louisville. The guy who, give him credit, made a bunch of money as a businessman or whatever crappy invention he came up with, who ran for office until he finally got one people would elect him for. When's the last time Greg Fisher was ever in the West End? Tell me that.
Oh, I agree with you. Last time he was anywhere close to the West End, he was in a daggone car and just drove through. He didn't stop and talk to anybody or get out of the car.
Maybe when he was campaigning, it's like Mitch McConnell supposedly. Yeah, it's like he's campaigning. Mitch McConnell supposedly from Louisville, but we never see him. And when do people see Greg Fisher if they're not at the city hall?
Yeah, I agree with you. And here's another thing we got to look at too, because what has this done? It just took away some more of our privacy rights, because now Greg Fisher has ordered a Louisville security camera network downtown. They're going to put an immediate first phase 24 security cameras at Waterfront Park and on the Big Four Bridge. That was put out in a press release today, and this is going to cost us over $200,000. But Fisher goes on to say the cameras are an important tool in helping anticipate and potentially prevent violence like what our community experienced last weekend. They have been shown to be effective in other communities. It won't prevent crime, but they will help. So now we're going to have Big Brother watching our shoulder 24 hours a day, whether we're doing something wrong or not. And that is always the answer for these idiots. Throw money at the problem. That's where throwing money at the problem is wrong.
Let me ask you this, Ed. When they decide, I don't know the answer to this question, so I want you to tell me. When they decide how many police are going to be on this part of town, how many police are going to be on that part of town, and how many are going to do this project and this special investigation, who decides that? Is that Conrad's call?
No.
I'm serious. I don't know. I want to know who's in charge of deciding how many police go to what event and what part of town.
Let me tell you something. That is not in Conrad's control. They'll say it is. LMPD.
I'm asking you. Whoever's control it is.
I know. I'm trying to explain it the only way I can.
Okay.
LMPD is supposedly responsible for the traffic plans and the security plans and everything else. But I will tell you right now that if Greg Fisher says keep the police away from this area, then they adjust to keep the police away from this area.
Oh, I believe you.
Conrad's supposed to have all that. Conrad doesn't have the control everybody wants to give him credit for. And it's sad, the reality of the situation. But it's interesting because we look at this mob violence, and that's all it is, racial mob violence. You call it what you want. We've got Greg Fisher out there patronizing, You've got Kevin Cosby out there patronizing. You've got Clarence Yancey and Denise Bentley who are out there buying more Democratic votes so these guys can continue to be patronizing. It's nuts to me because the West End community, believe it or not, folks, there's a hell of a lot of great people in the West End community, the majority of which is black. That's just the way it is, But they are scared to stand up for fear of retribution. And they can't stand up and do anything different because of these clowns. If I was the West End black community today, I would be rioting in the streets, not against the thugs. I would be rioting in the streets right now against this damn Democratic leadership that has been lying to them for at least 5 decades. 50 years they have been lied to and treated like second-class citizens. That's where the problem is. That's when you go to Kevin Cosby and St. Stephen's Church and just don't go to church and give him any more of your money. Let him starve. You want a community leader? I'll tell you a good community leader in the West End, a guy I've got a lot of respect for. A lot of people don't. I do. His name is Eddie Woods. He's been on this program. Eddie Woods walks these streets at night. Eddie Woods has been shot at trying to stop gang violence and what he does trying to work with troubled youth. And he still goes out and does it. Eddie Woods is trying to make a difference one kid at a time. The problem is there's too many kids for one man to get to. So what we've got to do is get to the leadership that created this problem. That's where we have a problem at.
No, I agree. And again, what I was going to say, I didn't think that Conrad got to have the final say over where these numbers are allotted. But I'm just saying whoever's in charge of it, again, that makes it even easier. If Conrad isn't doing it, then if it's some shadowy group behind the scenes that doesn't have to worry about their public image, then they don't have to worry about how they're foreseen in the minority community. But if they man up, show some balls, what they need to do, if I were Conrad or whomever is the shadowy group who decides these things behind LMPD, what they need to do is say tomorrow, call a press conference and say, hey, between now and about next October, we'll do it over the next 6 or 7 months, we're going to take about 80 to 90% of the cops who hide behind your bushes and try to give you tickets, and they're going to go to downtown and West End to clean this crap up.
Oh, yeah. Good luck with that one.
And it ain't never going to happen. I know it's a fantasy land, and we can believe in unicorns and rainbows, but that's what they need to do, because are you going to tell me that if we put them down there where they actually had to arrest kids and actually take a chance on getting punched by a thug, are you going to tell me that somehow out in the East End, somewhere out on Shelbyville Road and somewhere out on Westport Road, there's going to be more car accidents because the police aren't there? I don't think so.
Oh, I agree. I agree with you totally. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to continue with this because we haven't even got to the parents' portion of this or the school's culpability and all of this. And believe me, there's a lot. We're going to take a quick break, folks. We'll be right back to listen to the Ed Springston Show right here on the MVM Radio Network. Stay tuned.
First impressions aren't the most important thing. They're the only thing. At Ernie's Print Shop, we'll produce what you need to represent your company professionally. Right now, you can get 1,000 full-color business cards, 1,000 4x6 postcards, or a 3x5 banner for just $60. You choose. Check us out at Ernie'sPrintShop.com. Ernie's Print Shop. Over 50 years, one source, one solution. Ernie'sPrintShop.com. 502-969-8585.
Being a victim of crime is no joke, but you do have options that can help you avoid becoming a victim. I'm Ed Springston of the My View Matters radio show, and on behalf of myself and co-host Ed Martin, I urge each of you to help us fight against crime. You can do your part by calling Crime Stoppers at 582-CLUE. Since 1982, Crime Stoppers has helped get over 23,000 criminals off the street with your help. Working together, we can make a difference to take our streets back. Please call Crime Stoppers at 582-CLUE, or you can visit them online at www.582clue.com. Remember, Crime Stoppers always offers up to a $1,000 reward. Get involved and help make a positive change in your neighborhood. Thanks.
Advertisers, here's a great way to reach a quality audience. Get heard on My View Matters and make some noise in the marketplace.
Email myviewmatters@aol.com for advertising opportunities. Make a sound investment.
And we are back, folks. Welcome back to the Ed Springston Show right here on the MVM Radio Network. I tell you, Dale, it gets really amazing to me because we have no accountability for anybody anymore. And I tell you, we're talking about these mob riots. You know, we're talking about just like the psychology professor I just mentioned a few minutes ago, talking about how these kids don't have anybody at home that's doing anything. The parents aren't doing their job. The schools aren't doing their job. And now the schools are saying, you know what, we're going to do less of our job. And I'll tell you why. One of the stories that came out over the weekend, we talked about last night a little bit, is Jefferson County Public Schools is facing a large amount of criticism because of their zero-tolerance approach to discipline. So they are now going to meet, a committee of teachers, principals, parents, everybody, administrators, everybody, are now going to meet to look at how to loosen their student conduct policies to reduce punishments that removes thousands of students from class each year. What that means is, folks, is they're reporting too many suspensions. Their goal is to reduce suspensions. So instead of correcting the behavior, now we're going to make it acceptable for a certain amount of behavior before you get suspended. So you're just, as Ed Martin pointed out last night, you're just basically delaying a suspension for a week. Because a kid who screws up today is going to screw up tomorrow and go beat somebody up or steal or anything else. You know, that's because of behavior problems. So this is going to fix the problem that's leading to these troubled youth, right?
Yeah, that's going to clear it all up, just like more government involvement, more government money.
That's exactly it. You know, and we see this. So, I mean, the parents won't do their job at home. You know, parents, if you're bringing a kid into this world, it's your job to take care of raising them in a law-abiding society, in a law-abiding way, and until they become legal adults, and then they can be responsible for anything they want to do. But they're not going to do their job. So JCPS went with the zero-tolerance program a long time ago, and I'll be honest with you, the zero-tolerance program is always going to be a failure. It's set up to be a failure because in zero tolerance, it says in any conflict, both sides are equally responsible. But in the real world zero tolerance, you get into favoritism by principals and administrators. I know this from the time my kids were in Conway Middle School. The principal
the zero tolerance crap is where we get into little Johnny can't have a dull plastic knife to cut his peanut butter sandwich with during lunch, and he can't have a picture of a gun, or he can't hold his finger like a gun to go pew pew. I mean, that's what zero tolerance gives you. Those kids get suspended, where the kids throwing chairs around the classroom don't.
Oh, exactly. And it's funny you mentioned the name Little Johnny because my youngest son's name is Johnny, and he was one of the kids I'm talking about. When he was at Conway Middle School, one little punk kid, his mama was one of the big PTA people, right? She was at all these events playing the little queen bitch. Anyway, because everybody knew his mama, and they thought this kid was just the greatest thing next to Jesus Christ himself. Well, this kid kept harassing my son every day. I kept telling my son to ignore him. But one day the kid finally just pushed him face first into a locker. So he turned around and hit him. Well, zero tolerance says both kids should be suspended for that behavior.
Oh, yeah.
They tried to suspend my son.
If you get jumped, you get suspended.
Yeah, well, they tried to suspend my son for 3 days. And I asked them about the other kid. They told me the zero tolerance said he had to be suspended for 3 days. I said, fair enough. I said, I'll accept the suspension. But your other kid got suspended for 3 days too, right? And the principal looked at me, and I knew he couldn't tell me yes. I said, wait a minute. The other child got suspended too, right, for pushing him into the locker? Well, he says he didn't do that. I said, well, Johnny said he didn't hit him. What's the difference? Well, you know, his mom really does this for the school. We know this kid very well, and he's just not that kind of a child. I said, that's not your decision to make. That's not zero tolerance. I fought the suspension and won, obviously, but, you know, it's the principle of things. So zero tolerance has never been zero tolerance because you still have the favoritism. But I tell you, when I look at that and I think about that and what JCPS is doing, it brings me to this next story, Dale, that I think you're going to love.
Oh, boy.
Nakia Williams. She is the mother of a son who has Asperger's syndrome. She was arrested at his school. Here's the backstory. Miss Williams received a call from the school notifying her that her son was having a medical episode. She was laying in bed. She got a frantic phone call from the teacher and said that her son, Michael, was panicking. And when he started panicking, of course, that's part of Asperger's, and it takes you to a whole new level. So she rushed to the school. The school officials actually buzzed her into the building because it's a secure school. She saw a teacher, and anyway, she said, I saw a teacher, and she said, Miss Williams, what is wrong? The teacher had asked her what was wrong. And she said, something's wrong with Mikey, and I'm going straight to him. And she went straight to her son. So while she's proceeding to help her kid calm him down and reestablish order in the classroom because she was called at home by the school who let her in, the principal entered the classroom and told Miss Williams that she violated the school policy by not signing the guest book. Williams obviously didn't sign the guest book. She rushed straight to her kid, told the principal she'll sign the guest book. Go get it for me or I'll sign it in a minute. I've got to get Mikey under control. The principal wasn't satisfied for that. What did he do? He called the police. The school was put into lockdown for 12 minutes. The police arrived and arrested this concerned mother with a special needs child, saying that she had not authorized to enter the building. But the school opened the door to let her in, and they knew who she was and why she was there. So she got arrested. 4 officers arrested her for being a concerned parent. So, see, that's part of the problem, too. Even if you are a concerned parent, you're not allowed to do what's best for your child. In this particular case, the school is a lockdown facility anyway. They let her in. She agreed to sign the guest book while she was working on her kid, and they arrested her anyway. Explain that to me.
Well, it's government schools. I mean, again, I know I go for these big pie-in-the-sky ideals, but I think in a world where we constantly get told the myth, the lie of separation of church and state, which never existed in the Constitution, what we need is separation of school and state. And this is something that's going to take a long way to get there, but when the governments are running your schools, come on, we just talked about the same government are running the security that goes downtown to the West End. We can't call them security, they're cops, they're law enforcement. They used to be peace officers. So they started beating the hell out of the shit out of too many people and killing them. So now they're law enforcement. So it's the same government that's running these things. So it starts early. The example you gave with your son, I mean, you saw the politics start early in that school, and it goes throughout their lives, and the corporatism that goes along with it, and the government workers that go along with it. So this is what you get with government schools. I wish I could paint a prettier picture of it for you.
Well, this actually happened in Missouri, but you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, because this is the whole problem. When we do have a concerned parent that does exactly what they're supposed to do, and the school called this woman to come in and help her child, who was obviously in distress, a special needs child, hit the release button to open the electric door to let her in, follow her to the classroom, knew who she was, follow her to the classroom, and then had the police arrest her anyway. That is just beyond the pale. Now, what happens if that kid doesn't get help from his mom in a quick manner, and they make her sit outside for 5 minutes before they zap her in, and then they make her sign a guest book, all the while her kid is now going into some kind of convulsion on the floor, hits his head on the desk, whatever it is, busts his head open, maybe even dies from bleeding out. Who knows? All right. Then what happens? Now, all of a sudden, our government school, our indoctrination camp, as you call them, is now on the hook for a multi-million-dollar lawsuit.
Well, you just heard the story. We just talked about the civil servant / reverend / community activist bullshitters who say, oh, well, this is what happens when you get these kids in large groups. Well, what's a public school? It's a factory. You start the kids at the starting line, and you want to get them through the starting line and to the finish line in 12 years. You're trying to get them through that school as fast as you can, just like if they were out at the KTP or the LAP plant. You're trying to turn those kids out as fast as you can. There's no time for originality or creative thought or use of your actual intellectual mind. There's no room for all that, and this is what happens. And now I understand a lot of people I know, people in my family and close friends who are teachers. What do they tell you that these parents say when these kids throw chairs across their room and curse and swear and harass other kids? Their parents come to the school and say, well, little Janitha, little Shanikawa, they don't act like that at home. Something happens when they get to school.
Yeah, well, that's always a common thing. But, I do resent one thing you said, though. You're talking about how they rush these kids through 12 years of school so they can work at LAP and KTP. And I've got to make sure.
I said they rush them through there like it is a plant.
Oh, okay, man. I apologize.
No. Trust me, they're too well LAP and KTP, a lot smarter than the government indoctrination schools. No, I didn't mean
it that way. I mean, my point was that these guys aren't being rushed through 12 years of school to work at LAP and KTP because we don't have those jobs available in Louisville.
Well, that's true, but they make it like it's assembly lines, what I mean.
But we've got McDonald's going up on every corner, so maybe they need quicker people in there to flip those burgers and ask if you want fries with that.
They want $12 or $13 an hour, so, the McDonald's workers do, so we can use that example in other countries where they now take orders over a machine and they make your food and put it out a lot quicker and a lot cheaper. I mean, this is what's coming to, and I know we heard this, and again, this kind of ties back in. We're way over the map all over the place, I know, but this ties back into union jobs in a little bit. Do you remember, Ed, when they first came out with the U-scans at the Kroger's?
Oh, yeah.
The unions were pissed. It was going to take away all these jobs.
Yep. And everybody was riled up and crazy about it, and it did eliminate jobs. And you know what? Go into any Kroger any time of day or night where there's customers in there.
Yep.
Look at the ones who are wearing the UAW Ford jackets or the Teamsters jackets and these union employees going to U-Scan because they don't feel like standing in line for 2 minutes.
Exactly.
All right, So, it's all hypocritical.
But I use that example because they want $12 or $13 at the fast food restaurants now, and they got to be careful because they're not giving you anything when you go to those places. We know the McDonald's are on every corner. People don't go to McDonald's for gourmet food. They go there because it's convenient. I mean, they go there because it's on every corner. They can grab some genetically modified food and stuff it in little Billy or in little Molly's mouths before they take them home and put them in front of the television set.
Oh, you're right. You're absolutely right, and that is, man, I could go for hours on that, but it's the truth. It really is, and that's the whole thing for me. So we've got all of these kids who have no direction. Greg Fisher yesterday even said that something about these lost youth. These youth have lost their way, I think was the way that he worded it. And the big thing for me is, in order for somebody to lose their way, they must have a way that they're running from or lost from. And the problem is today's kids don't have any way. You don't have a lost way if you've never found a way. That's the problem. We haven't done one damn thing in our community. And if you look across the country, you're going to see most communities are a mirror reflection of this, to do much to give these kids away. And I think it's interesting because you mentioned these unions a second ago, and everything else. We talked about the Kroger thing. Here's an interesting fact most people aren't paying attention to either. Since Indiana went to a right-to-work laws in February of 2012, the private sector payroll employment in Indiana has increased 3.3%. Not one state of the 5 remaining forced unionism states in the Midwest had any kind of a private sector payroll job gain as great as Indiana's. What does that tell us?
I'm listening.
I'll let you go, baby. That's what you love to do. But in the U.S., according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Stats, on the monthly state employment and unemployment, this is the end of December, Indiana had an especially strong gain of 25,300 private sector jobs in November alone. So what we're finding is these right-to-work laws, a lot of people don't like the right-to-work laws. The unions don't like the right-to-work laws, I should say. They don't like it because they're losing union membership and they're losing control and power. When you talk about, and you go to the National Right-to-Work Committee Vice President Matthew Lean, he goes on to talk about how this shows that right-to-work laws foster job and compensation growth. And it's interesting, too, because he goes on to say this. According to the National Right-to-Work Committee Vice President Matthew Lean, he goes on to say that in the 22 states that had right-to-work laws throughout the 10 years from 2002 to 2012, the private sector non-farm employment, as reported by the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, remember, this is your government at work, folks, grew by 15.3% over the decade. In a decade, private job growth grew 15.3% in the 22 states that have right to work. You look at the average growth rate for any state that doesn't have right to work, you're looking at single digits, probably about half of that. They usually average somewhere between 6 and 7%. So right to work states are getting double the jobs. What does that tell us?
Well, I've been saying for a long time, and I guess I might go back and listen to our old shows. But Ed Springston, you tell us you're coming around on right to work.
No. No. We're not. I'm not getting into that. What I'm talking about is the job creation. The point of what let me explain myself a little bit better. I ain't gonna take long because we got to get into closing arguments, or into final thoughts. Closing arguments. Sound like a lawyer, don't I? Right? No. I mean, I still don't think you need right to work laws. For me personally, if you are in a union shop and you take a job at this union shop, like a Ford and UAW, you know that Ford is unionized. You know that you're going in at $15, $16 an hour because the union negotiated that rate. I've got no problem with you making sure you're a union member when you go to Ford. Now, if you want to go to a Toyota that's non-union and you want to unionize Toyota and Toyota goes union, then it's now union. It's one or the other. I don't like this. You get to benefit from the union's work or the union's negotiations. You get the same benefits, the same security and everything else as you would for a union worker and not have to pay for that. Because what that ultimately does is for places that do believe in union labor, that do hire union labor, and union organizations are out there negotiating these contracts, well, if I'm a guy working next to you, you're making the same money and have the same protections and privileges I've got because of the union, and I'm paying $30, $40 a month for that, and you're not, well, I'm going to quit the union. I'm not going to pay it either. And then you have no income, and at that point, the union has no incentive to negotiate for you. So what happens is, eventually those wages get knocked down, and you start losing all these different things. We're already seeing parts of that with the two-tier wage system with the UAW. What I'm getting at here is the right-to-work laws I don't like overall because of that scenario. But there's no arguing with the fact that the non-union shops, and this is where the 15.3% is coming from, is the non-union shops in the private sector hiring more people because they don't have to be forced into getting unions.
Oh yeah.
You see what I mean? Does that make better sense?
No, I mean it does. It's one of those things that I'm very much for right to work, and I see the whole issue, and we'll have to do another show on it another time. We have more minutes to dedicate, but I also agree that we look at states like Indiana and Tennessee, where they're not so controlled by the unions, and they're also not controlled by the higher taxes, more businesses come in. And that's why you have plants being very successful in Indiana. And yeah, let's be honest, even Georgetown, Kentucky, which is supposed to be these foreign cars coming in, but now they're made here by Americans, by Kentuckians. So I see when you have a state like Indiana that allows people to come in here and get a job making a car without joining a union, and you have less taxes, it works. But our state is so far behind the times. That's why Mark Twain said when the world ended, he wanted to be in Kentucky, so it'd be 20 years later.
Well, and I think you're right about that because, I mean, really, truthfully, it's not the right-to-work laws I think cause the most problems, especially here in Louisville and Kentucky. It's the garbage tax structure that we use. But we are running out of time, man. It is time for final thoughts. Dale, please go ahead.
Well, final thoughts is, on this network, we talk about the truth and what goes on with these riots and these black mobs, and people don't want to talk about it. And there are a lot of groups out there that you can go do research on. I'm not going to plug one or the other to get real news, because the problem is today's news is not news. So if you want to hear it, I guess I'm plugging our own network here, because we're going to bring you the truth. We're going to try to rescue the First Amendment that's down in the ditch, getting kicked in the head by what they call mainstream media, the ABC, CBS, PMS, NBCs of the world, because you're going to come here and get something they're not telling you about. And it goes back to what Neil Postman said in his book, Amusing Ourselves to Death. They put out this crap pop culture stuff, and they tell you it's news. We don't care what some celebrities, babies, mamas, daddies, girlfriends doing. That doesn't affect you. You need to get involved. You need to realize they're there to try to feed you junk food. It's junk food media is what we should call it. There's junk food at McDonald's and there's junk food media. So you can stand on our side and stand up to the junk food media, or you can be part of their new world order.
Well, I tell you, that's actually a pretty good way to look at it. I like the junk food media, the way that you worded that so eloquently, if you will. You know, it's like White Castle versus, I don't know, Burger King or something. But it is to the point anymore. And this is what's great about the internet today. And this is what's fantastic about having, live online radio websites like the LouisvillePolitics.com, the MVM Radio Network right here, things like that. Because more and more people, millions of people every day now go to the internet to get their news. And they go to local shows like this one who touch on national issues as well. They go to places like us because that's exactly what they're looking for, is the truth. That's why the internet advertising, your online radio and your online website advertising, is second only to broadcast TV and ad dollar revenue. Print media, everything else is now at rock bottom prices, and nobody's buying it. They're buying it at places like this because we deliver. We deliver the content, so we deliver the listeners.